We all know that our value as legal nurse consultants is only as good as the value that we add to our attorney clients. But here's the big secret. How do we do that? No one wants to tell you what goes into these reports that actually adds value. Well, today I'm going to give you those secrets. I'm going to tell you exactly what we put into our reports in my very successful legal nurse consulting firm to add value to our attorney clients. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is you want it to be a professional presentation, right? You don't want to come across as a nurse sitting in their closet all by themselves trying to figure this out. You want this to look like a professional work product that an attorney would be proud to look at, right? That they'd be happy to see coming, that they know is very high quality. And you want them to know that right from the start with a cover page. So that's the way that I like to start out every report of mine, is with a very nice, well-crafted cover page that should include your logo, by the way. After your cover page, if this is a full chronology and report, or a lot of the other types of work products that I teach inside Catalyst, chronologies and reports are not the only type. But if it's a long report, then I like to add a table of contents. Well, let me just spell that out for us. Table of contents. And personally, what I like to do is to link my table of contents. I do teach how to do that inside of the program. I'm sure you could Google it and figure that out. But to link it so they can click it and go wherever they want to within that document. Pretty simple process if you know how to do it. But it does make it's kind of a little white glove touch, right, that a lot of people don't do. So I like to put a table of contents as well. Then after that, what I like to put is sort of the basic client info. So I'm going to be putting basic client info there. Let me put my little bullet points there. Basic client info, what's their name, date of birth, date of injury, that sort of stuff. After the basic info, I like to go into what documents I've actually reviewed. So what docs did I review for this particular case? I like to list them out and how many pages there were, as well as some other things that you'll learn about inside the program. I like to personally go over, especially on a personal injury case, and it's a little bit different with medical malpractice. I'm going to focus this particular video on personal injury. And a little bit different on med mal. I do some different things in the report itself. But for PI cases or personal injury cases, I like to go over the injuries as well as the diagnoses that were after the date of injury. So what injuries or diagnosis do they have after the date that they were actually injured? That's a great way to really just at the very top of the report to go into look at this list of 30 different things, the way that this client was hurt by this particular event, whether it be a collision, slip and fall, whatever type of personal injury case you might be working on. What a great way to kick off that report, right? And then we get to the meat of the report. Now, this, I could spend hours talking to you about this. In fact, we spend a lot of time inside Catalyst discussing this part of the report that I call the narrative. So the narrative is essentially where you are giving them the story of what happened. Hopefully you saw my other video where I go over what should be in a chronology. So in a chronology, the attorney can see on this day this happened, on this day this happened, on this day this happened. They can also see what your thoughts were about that, gain some education through the illustrations and the research. But it's not really telling them the story, right? It's a table format, really. So this is where you're telling the story. And the way I like to tell my clients in Catalyst to write the narrative is professional, compelling. Think of it as if the attorney stood up in front of the courts and read out your narrative summary. Would it be compelling and professional? Is it something they could read that would flow well, that a judge or opposing counsel or even a jury would say, dang, that's a good case. It really sounds like there was a lot of damages done. to this client in that case. That's the way you want to write this narrative. And it's a super important part of your overall report. Another thing that I like to add in mind is I like to indicate causation. I think on a PI report, this is so important. This causation is something that you're going to hear over and over and over in personal injury as well as in med mal, but especially in personal injury. And causation is, did the event, whatever the event was, cause the injuries and diagnosis? So you want to be able to link the injuries and diagnoses back to the actual event. That's called causation. And I like to really pull that out both in my narrative and in some other ways that you would learn more in depth if you decided to join the program. Then I also like to give my opinion. So that's part of what they're paying us for, right? Is to give our opinion as the legal nurse. I've reviewed these records. I've given you the facts of the records. I've linked research. I've explained the records to you. I've given you a narrative story of what happened in this case. Now I'm going to give you my opinion based on what I've looked at, based on the medical facts. Here's what I believe happened. Now, remember, in your opinion section, you want to support your attorney-client. So that's in the narrative and in the opinion section throughout your report. Now, that does not mean that you're making crap up, right? It doesn't mean you're lying. And I would never, ever, ever, ever ask or suggest or do that myself. You should always have integrity. You should have a moral standard. And you should always be truthful, honest, and transparent. That is what Catalyst is built on. And without that, we have nothing. So don't compromise your integrity or your morality to assist a client. But there's always two ways to tell a story, right? That's why we have courts. If it was all super black and white, we wouldn't need courts. We wouldn't need attorneys. It would just be black and white. So there's always different ways to tell a story. And your opinion should ultimately support the attorney that you're working for. Then, after you give the opinion a little bit later, let's just keep working through this, and you're going to see that we're not just going to ignore the fact that the case doesn't completely lend to our client, whether that's plaintiff or defense. I've never seen one that there wasn't anything the opposing counsel could use in the records against the case, right? There's always going to be two sides. So the next thing I like to point out is any missing records. This is super important because you'll see in the as you're going through the records, you'll see things like, follow up with ortho. Well, there's no follow-up appointment. Get a CT scan in 2 weeks. No CT scan, no MRI, right? So you'll see that sort of stuff, and you'll know they were supposed to have PT for 6 weeks, 3 times a week, and you've only got 10 PT visits. Where's the rest, right? So you'll see things like that, and you can identify those missing records. We're almost coming to a close here. This, I think, is huge. I want to make suggestions on what they should do in the case, whether they should get experts, if so, what types of experts. And then super duper important here, suggestions, let me say that, and then we'll just say / vulnerabilities. So I want to be able to point out to them, what could opposing counsel use in these medical records against you? Where is your case weak? We're not ignoring those things. As a matter of fact, they're very important, because if your attorney goes into a settlement negotiation and he already knows all the cards the opposing side's going to play, he has the upper hand, right? So that's a super important part of the case analysis and of the report. And we go into more detail inside of Catalyst. And as you learn and go through the lessons and the modules in Catalyst, you'll really learn how to do that in a way that truly increases the value even more in your cases. And then finally, I always like to add a little bibliography to the bottom. Basically, where did I find the research, the articles that I gave them, the illustrations I used, just a little bibliography at the end so they can go. I like to link all those, hyperlink them so they can go and read the articles as well. And this is essentially the way that you can create a report that adds value to your attorney clients and sets you apart as a legal nurse consultant. I hope this was really helpful for you guys. If you found it interesting or helpful, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the future videos that I do. Check out my other video called How to Become a Legal Nurse Consultant if you're not already an LNC and you're interested in being an LNC. And we have free training. So if you want to click the link down in the description, you can access our free training there and potentially schedule a call with us to learn more about moving forward with Catalyst if that's something you're interested in. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was helpful.